Okay, this is the BenchSmart 96. It is a semi-automated pipetting instrument. Semi-automation here, the head slides left to right, up and down. So you have two knobs here. One is fixed. The knob here is for coarse and fine-tune adjustment. There is a head that's in place behind this plexiglass here. This head that's currently in place is a 200 microliter head, but this head can be changed out. We have three head options, a 20 microliter, a 200 microliter, and a 1000 microliter. On the tray deck here, we have two trays, and each tray slides in and out. In each tray, there are two positions. So you have the option to change the configuration of your plates and your reservoirs. So all of these positions are created equally, and they will fit a standard 96 well plated skirt. We also have the tip basket. The tip basket here will hold your tips for loading your tips for your head. On the tips here, the tips for the 20 microliter and the 200 microliter head sit on a platform. This platform allows the tips to be brought up to the correct height to be able to load onto the BenchSmart 96 head. If you are using a 1000 microliter head, you do not use this platform. There are grooves within the basket so that those grooves will lock into the bottom of the tip rack to secure the tip rack in place. So we are using a 200 microliter head, so we will use the platform in place, and we will place our tips right on the platform to make sure they are secure. So the reservoir sits here on the right side, but as I mentioned, you have the option to switch to the left side depending on your preference, your workflow, your handedness. This deck here allows you to stack plates. So these plates, depending on the size of the plate, the height of the plate, you can stack 5 to 7 plates. It may be less than that if you're using deep well plates instead of your standard smaller 96 well trays. So the instrument here on the front of it also has a display. This display here on the front will tell you the actions that the instrument is doing at that moment. It also tells you just the standard status of the instrument. To the left and right of this display are these gray buttons, and depending on your application, you can use these buttons to load your tips, eject your tips, as well as aspirate and dispense. You can aspirate and dispense from either side, depending on your handedness or your preference. Now, as far as operating the instrument, you can load and eject tips from these gray buttons, as well as aspirate and dispense, but all of the input comes from this tablet here. The tablet is connected to an arm on the BenchSmart. This arm actually can be mounted on the right side or the left side. Again, it depends on your handedness. It also depends on your workflow configuration, your space at your bench. So this tablet is where you will input your volumes, and you can also aspirate and dispense from the tablet, as well as load and eject tips. This tablet is touchscreen, so you can use a gloved hand, as I have my gloves on here, and you have different options in your modes. So our first mode that we have here is our basic mode. The basic mode is just that. It will allow you to aspirate and dispense at a single speed. So as you see here, the volume is set at 200. To change that volume, you simply tap on the volume field there, enter your desired volume, press enter, and as you can see, the volume is set. To change the speed, it's the same thing. You tap on the field there. You can change the speed. 10 is the highest, 1 is the lowest, depending on the viscosity of your liquid, or if you're dealing with a detergent, you can change your speed to something slower to ensure accuracy and precision here based on the the type of the liquid. Okay, so this is our basic mode. Aspirate and dispense is all you can do. Let's look at loading tips. So we will load tips here. Lower your head down into your tips, and you will hear a chime. That chime tells you that the sensor has detected that you are in the proper position to be able to load your tips. So to load the tips, we'll use the touch screen here. Tap the icon for loading your tips. And you will see that there is a tip load process, steps that will appear on your screen, on your tablet, as well as on your screen here. It is a two-step process, so there's a verification. So after you touch your icon on your tablet, you do have to verify that you really do want to load your tips. So you can do the verification here on your touch screen. Your tips are loading. The instrument is loading the tips there. All 96 tips have been loaded onto the BenchSmart head, and we are ready for aspirate. So we slide the head over into our liquid reservoir here, lower down into our liquid, and we will begin our aspirate. The instrument will tell you what it is ready for, and it is primed for an aspirate. So we will touch the triangle here on the left that is pointing upward. You can see from the display that the instrument has performed the aspirate, and the status display on the front of the instrument shows the same thing. Okay, so now it tells you that it's ready to dispense. We can check and we can see that our tips are fully loaded. We have evenness across each tip. From here, we can slide our head over our 96 well plate, lower our tips down into the plate. We will tap the dispense icon here, which is an arrow triangle pointing down. And you can see that the liquid has been dispensed from the tips. Okay, so that is our basic mode. From here, we can eject our tips back into our tip rack, lowering down into our tip rack here, just slightly above our tip deck, and we will tap the eject icon for the tips. Again, it is asking you to verify to ensure that you really want to eject these tips, and we will verify with the triangle pointing downward. Tips have been ejected. At this point, you can remove these tips that have been used from your tip platform there and add a fresh set of tips. For purposes of this, we will use the same set of tips. Okay, so that is basic mode. Now there are other mode options here that go beyond just basic aspirate and dispense. Our most popular is the advanced mode. In advanced mode, you can perform most workflows and applications in this mode. There is an options menu here, and let's turn everything off. We have a fixed volume. We have volume sequencing. There is a mix option. There's a cycle counter so that you can cycle count through how many aspirate and dispenses you have gone through on the instrument. That can be helpful either for service or to keep track of where you are in your workflow in an SOP that requires a few cycles of perhaps maybe the same steps repeated. And then there's blowout as well. Now the preset mode allows you to set some of your SOPs and set those in the instrument. So here we have several that are preset simply by tapping the preset mode, the preset option, and you can load that preset. When you load that preset, all volumes pertaining to that particular workflow are automatically pulled in so that you don't have to put those volumes in every time you work through that workflow on the instrument. Okay, so let's walk through the volume sequencing piece of it here so that you can see what that looks like. Volume sequencing is very helpful because if you have a workflow where you have multiple volumes that you need to aspirate and dispense across either a single plate or multiple plates, you have the instrument that's pre-programmed with those volumes already in place so that you're not having to continuously re-enter different volumes. So if we put on, turn on volume sequencing here, and you tap the field for the volumes, you can see that there are up to 16 volumes that you can enter into the volume sequencing settings. Those volumes can be the same volumes, they can be different volumes. The instrument will step through each of those volumes. So to change a volume, you tap the field for that, volume, and you enter in your desired volume here. Let's go with 75. You go to your next volume, and we will enter our next volume, and we'll say 60. Press enter. And then we can select a third volume. And we will make that one 100. So our volumes are now set. We say in volume. When you tap in volume, then the instrument understands that the 3 volumes that you have entered will be the 3 volumes that it will step through on the next aspirate and dispense commands. Done. And you see here in the first field, you have volume 1 of 3. So the instrument has accepted those 3 volumes that are programmed in. You can also change your aspirate and your dispense speed in the advanced mode, which is something different than your basic mode. So here, let's change our speed by tapping the field for aspirate. We'll change it to 8, just relatively quick. And our dispense, we will dispense at 10. Okay. So we have our 3 volumes set, we have our 2 aspirate and dispense speeds, and we are ready to aspirate and dispense. So as we walk through, we have our plate stacked here, and we will use these stacked plates for this demo purpose. So let's pull our tray forward. We are going to load our tips. Listen for the chime. And this time we will use the gray buttons that are on the instrument. Okay. All of our tips have been loaded onto the head. We slide our head over to our reservoir of liquid, lower our tips into our liquid, and we will tap the gray buttons for our aspirate. The first volume has been aspirated. It's 75 microliters. We will dispense that first volume into our wells of our 96 well plate stacked here behind the reservoir of liquid, and we will dispense. Okay, so we have our first dispense. The instrument has prompted us to do the second dispense, aspirate and dispense, which is 60 microliters. And in this case, we can remove this tray plate and do our second aspirate. We have our second volume aspirated. We will dispense it to the next tray, the next plate here. Dispense. Do a touch off. And then our final aspirate and dispense. Into our third plate. Okay. So that is our 3 volumes dispensed into 3 different plates. Now you may be wondering, can this instrument do mixing? Of course we can mix. So let's add mixing component to that. You simply go into your options menu, turn your mixing on, and you can see here, these icons here will tell you that you are mixing and you're doing some volume sequencing. So let's do our first volume. We are going to aspirate from the tablet this time. Okay. Our mix volume here is set at 40 microliters. So the instrument will pull up 40 microliters and begin its mixing, and it will mix 4 times. So let's dispense into this 96 well plate. It's in our tablet. So it performed 4 mixes, pulling up 40 microliters each time. So it's ready for its second volume. And if you'd like, you can change your reservoir reagent to a new reagent so that you can add that to your plate and continue through your workflow. We will dispense this second volume into this same plate and we will watch the mixing. And that is our second volume. Now, if we have room in our plate, we can add our third volume. And continue. Again, we may have changed our reagent there. So the instrument has aspirated 100 microliters, and we will dispense that into our wells here, and we'll let the instrument do the mixing. There we have our plate has been filled with our 3 reagents and mixed, and it is ready for the next phase in the workflow. Okay, so that is our advanced mode. We also have, do a reset here. We also have our multi-dispense mode, which is very valuable. So here's where you will do multiple aliquots across multiple plates if that is part of your workflow. Okay, so we'll work through the multi-dispense, and this is for aliquots within across multiple plates. Okay, so we are in sequential volumes here. So seq volumes, you can aliquot multiple different volumes across multiple plates. So here's an option. Let's set these volumes. Let's change the volumes here. Let's go with 50 for the first one. Change the second to 75. And we'll do a third volume of, we'll do 45. Okay, so those are 3 aliquots. We'll end that volume there. And you can see those volumes add to 170 microliters, and the instrument will aspirate 170 microliters and dispense the 3 aliquots that we have set it to dispense. Now, one of the options in the multi-dispense is an auto paste, and I'll show you that in a bit. Okay, pull our tray forward, lower into the liquid, aspirate. The instrument will pull up 170, a total of 170 microliters, and it's ready to dispense the first volume, which is the first aliquot of 50 microliters. We push the tray in for our first plate. We lower down into our plate, and we tap the dispense icon, and the instrument has dispensed the first volume of 50 microliters into your first plate. Take that plate, you can set that plate aside. It's ready to dispense the second aliquot into your next plate. Dispense. The instrument has dispensed your next volume into your plate. Set that plate aside. And then do your final aliquot here, which is 45 microliters, to your plate. Okay, we can do a chop. And we've done our final dispense aliquot. And what's left is just the blowout portion here. So we can blow that out into our liquid. Do a blowout. And you'll blow out. Okay. And then it's ready to aspirate all over again if that's part of your workflow. So that is multi-dispense across multiple plates. Now there is a way to do a multi-dispense across multiple plates without having to tap your button, your dispense button, every time you're ready to dispense, and I'll show you that. So another feature of multi-dispense is called auto paste. So with auto paste, instead of having to tap the icon to dispense, it will just dispense automatically based on the time interval that you've set in between each plate. So tap the options, turn on auto paste just by tapping the field, and then set your time. So let's set the time to 5 seconds. So it will pause for 5 seconds to allow you to move your plate off the deck, and then it will begin to dispense again. So pull your tray forward, lower your tips down into your liquid. Let's aspirate from the buttons here. So 170 microliters has been aspirated. And then now we will begin our dispense. Slide your tray forward. Lower to your plate. Tap dispense. Begins the countdown. There you go. That's with auto paste. So let's go back to our reservoir liquid here. Lower down into our liquid, and we will manually blow out. Okay, and that is our multi-dispense function on the BenchSmart. So another useful function here is the reverse pipetting. So if reverse pipetting is something that you would normally do with your manual pipette, you can also do reverse pipetting with the BenchSmart. It is very useful for very viscous liquids such as blood or some sort of serum or glycerol. So with reverse pipetting, again, you can set your volumes. You do have options here. You can do a fixed volume option. You can also do the volume sequencing so that it will walk through multiple volumes, one after the other for you. So these preset options, these options are similar to the options that I've shown you with the other modes here. So we'll just do a fixed volume here. We lower down into the liquid. This is set for 100 microliters. It's one volume. We're set at 8, a speed of 8 for the aspirate and dispense. If we tap the tablet, so the instrument has pulled up and is ready to dispense 100 microliters. So we slide the tray back into place, lower the tips down into your wells in your plate, and we will dispense. Now the dispense here, you can see that there is some liquid remaining in the tips, but that is the nature of reverse pipetting technique, the instrument will pull up more than that's needed because of the viscosity of the liquid, and then it will dispense the volume that has been entered. So it did dispense 100 microliters, although it pulled up slightly more to ensure accuracy and precision during the dispense. So you can lower that back into your liquid and dispense the final blowout portion back into your reservoir if you'd like. And that's reverse pipetting. So let's show how to change the head. So the BenchSmart 96 has the options of 3 different head volumes. To change the head, it's quite simple. Simply tap the head change wizard. The head change wizard will walk you through the head change. So the first thing is to ensure that the tips have been ejected before proceeding. So here we have no tips on our head, but if we did have tips on our head, you have the option here to tap the tip here and then you can continue. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to remove this plate cover. It's just connected with magnets. And there are tabs here that we will lift. So lift the tabs on the right, on the left, and then using an empty tip rack box so that we do not touch the nozzles and we minimize any contamination potential. We place the empty rack right at the bottom onto the nozzles in place. And using these tabs here, we simply slide the head out. And replace it with the next desired volume of the head, which possibly could be a larger or smaller head. Lower the tabs there. Place the cover back into position, and we tap done. The instrument will move through a complete head initialization, and you are ready for your next workflow. Okay, so some of the other options that we have on the tablet are the lighting. The lighting button actually helps you visualize best when you are loading your tips, and also when you're aspirating and dispensing, gives you a little more light so you can see what you're doing to make sure that your liquid is in the right place and your cells haven't been disrupted and so forth. So by tapping the light icon here, you can turn your light on to low, medium, or high. Okay, and we also have a settings here. So for your settings, we have a main setup, many options. You can walk through and change the language. We have several language options there. This one's set to English. You can also change your user settings. Your user settings allows you to have an auto shut off, which means after 30 minutes of being idle, the tablet will just shut off. And also the instrument brightness. So if you like to keep the sound high, the instrument lighting high, the terminal brightness and so forth, you can change all those settings or leave those as high. Then the system information is very helpful. So it may be something that you need to keep for your record so that when you purchase the instrument and you want to record the firmware version, the terminal version, it's very useful information to have. Also, this information is very pertinent for service issues or any discussions with technical support. And you can access the admin settings. Admin settings also includes a user setup. So if you like to add users, you can add users. You can add users either by name so that those individuals can log in and have their own workflow set up. But if you have a system where it's more like an assembly line and there are different workstations, then you can set up a user so that it has a name such as wash 1 or extraction 2. That particular user setup will house your presets and your protocols related to that particular portion of your workflow. And then of course there's the admin who will be able to go in and change all of the settings. All the other settings can be locked. So we can also look look at date and time. This can be very important if you are in a different time zone from where your instrument has shipped. You can go in and change that. And you can also go into your mode settings. Mode settings allows you to lock or unlock particular modes. So the modes that we had discussed, if your workflow requires that your researchers only are operating in advanced mode, then you can lock all the other modes and leave advanced mode locked and so forth. So you have your mode access and then your instrument buttons. So when I first started, we talked about the buttons that are on the left and the right of the display screen. You can turn those off or you can leave those on. And then your eject buttons and so forth. So you have the option of turning those on or turning those off depending on what your requirements are. This instrument does fit into the hood. So if you have it in the hood and you have an SOP that requires that there are no hands inside of the hood during a particular workflow, you can turn those buttons off so that only the tablet will work. The tablet would be placed outside of the hood and all actions can be performed from the tablet. And then there is a service button. So the main thing with this button is that you can actually do a complete factory reset if you need it to, but that's something that you would only do under the instruction of our technical support or service team. And those are all of our settings. If you have questions here, there are a few things that are on board here that'll help, a little bit of help there for you. In advanced mode. So if you're in advanced mode and you tap the question mark, then the helpful hints will be related to that particular mode. The other important feature here is that the head size will be shown at the top of the tablet. So if you have a 200 microliter head in place, that is what you'll see at the top of the tablet. You will not be able to input volumes greater than 200 microliters. The instrument will not allow you to input, say, 220 microliters if there's a 200 microliter head in place. Power off here. You can power off your tablet by simply touching the power button there. You can do a shutdown simply from here. You also have the option to shut down from a button that's at the top of the tablet. You can shut down that in that manner as well. You can see the icons here. You've got a full charge on your battery. Your battery on your tablet is charged based on your instrument. If your instrument is on and your tablet is connected, then it will be charging. You turn off your instrument, you leave your tablet on, the battery will be drained, and you'll see that there on your battery symbol.